As promised, here is part 2 of my tremendous UN speech. Part 1 was great, everybody loved it. They're still talking about it. But part 2, even bigger, even better. People are already saying, "Sir, this is historic." And by the way, part 3 is coming. It's going to be huge. Maybe the biggest part of all. People can't wait. Everybody's asking me about it. You're going to love it. Energy is another area where the United States is now thriving like never before. We're getting rid of the falsely named renewables. By the way, they're a joke. They don't work. They're too expensive. They're not strong enough to fire up the plants that you need to make your country great. The wind doesn't blow. Those big windmills are so pathetic and so bad, so expensive to operate, and they have to be rebuilt all the time and they start to rust and rot. Most expensive energy ever conceived, and it's actually energy. You're supposed to make money with energy, not lose money. You lose money. The governments have to subsidise. You can't put them out without massive subsidies, and most of them are built in China, and I give China a lot of credit. They build them, but they're very few wind farms. So why is it that they build them and they send them all over the world, but they barely use them? You know what? They use coal, they use gas, they use almost anything, but they don't like wind. But they sure as hell like selling the windmills. Europe, on the other hand, is a long way to go, with many countries being on the brink of destruction because of the green energy agenda. And I give a lot of credit to Germany. Germany was being led down a very sick path, both on immigration, by the way, and on energy. They were going green and they were going bankrupt. And the new leadership came in and they went back to where they were with fossil fuel and with nuclear, which is good, it's now safe, and you can do it properly. But they went back to where they were and they opened up a lot of different plants, energy producing plants, and they're doing well. I give Germany a lot of credit for that. They've said, this is a disaster. What's happening? They were going all green. All green is all bankrupt. That's what it represents. And it's not politically correct. I'll be very badly criticised for saying it, but I'm here to tell the truth. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I'm in New York City. I'm feeling a lot safer. Crime, we're getting crime down. And by the way, speaking of crime, Washington, D.C. was the crime capital of America. Now, after 12 days, it's a totally safe city. Everyone's going out to dinner, they're going out to restaurants. Your wife can walk down the middle of the street with or without you. Nothing's going to happen. My people have done a fantastic job. And yes, I called in the National Guard, and the National Guard took care of business. And they weren't politically correct, but they took care of business. We got 1,700 career criminals out, brought them back to where they came from, the countries where they came from, or put them in jails. Washington, D.C. is now a totally safe city again, and I welcome you to come. In fact, we'll have dinner together at a local restaurant, and we'll be able to walk. We don't have to go by an armour-plated vehicle. We'll walk right over there from the White House. They've given up their powerful edge. A lot of the countries that we're talking about, and oil and gas, such as essentially closing the Great North Sea oil. Oh, the North Sea. I know it so well. Aberdeen was the oil capital of Europe, and this tremendous oil that hasn't been found in the North Sea. Tremendous oil. And I was with the Prime Minister I respected, like a lot. And I said, You're sitting with the greatest asset. They essentially closed it by making it so highly taxed that no developer, no oil company can go there. They have tremendous oil left, and more importantly, they have tremendous oil that hasn't even been found yet. And what a tremendous asset for the United Kingdom. And I hope the Prime Minister's listening, because I told it to him 3 days in a row. That's all he heard. North Sea oil. North Sea. Because I want to see them do well. I want to stop seeing them ruining that beautiful Scottish and English countryside with windmills and massive solar panels that go 7 miles by 7 miles taking away farmland. But we're not letting this happen in America. In 1982, the executive director of the United Nations Environmental Programme predicted that by the year 2000, climate change would cause a global catastrophe. He said that it will be irreversible as any nuclear holocaust would be. This is what they said at the United Nations. What happened? Here we are. Another UN official stated in 1989 that within a decade, entire nations could be wiped off the map by global warming. Not happening. It used to be global cooling. If you look back years ago in the 1920s and the 1930s, they said global cooling will kill the world. We have to do something. Then they said global warming will kill the world. But then it started getting cooler. So now they could just call it climate change, because that way they can't miss climate change, because if it goes higher or lower, whatever the hell happens, it's climate change. It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion. Climate change, no matter what happens, you're involved in that. No more global warming, no more global cooling. All of these predictions made by the United Nations and many others, often for bad reasons, were wrong. They were made by stupid people that of course their countries' fortunes, and given those same countries, no chance for success. If you don't get away from this green scam, your country is going to fail. And I'm really good at predicting things. They actually said during the campaign they had a hat, the best-selling hat. Trump was right about everything. And I don't say that in a braggadocious way, but it's true. I've been right about everything. And I'm telling you that if you don't get away from the green energy scam, your country is going to fail. And if you don't stop people that you've never seen before, that you have nothing in common with, your country is going to fail. I'm the President of the United States, but I worry about Europe. I love Europe. I love the people of Europe, and I hate to see it being devastated by energy and immigration. This double-tailed monster destroys everything in its wake, and they cannot let that happen any longer. You're doing it because you want to be nice, you want to be politically correct, and you're destroying your heritage. They must take control strongly and immediately of the unmitigated immigration disaster and the fake energy catastrophe before it's too late. The carbon footprint is a hoax made up by people with evil intentions, and they're heading down a path of total destruction. The carbon footprint, it was a big, big thing. A few years ago, I remember hearing about the carbon footprint, and then President Obama would get into Air Force One, a massive Boeing 747 and not a new one. An old one with old engines that spew everything into the atmosphere. He talked about the carbon footprint we must do. Then he'd get in and he'd fly from Washington to Hawaii to play a round of golf. And then he'd get back onto that big, beautiful plane and he'd fly back and he'd talk about again global warming and the carbon footprint. It's a con job at extreme cost and expense. Europe reduced its own carbon footprint by 37%. Think of that. Congratulations, Europe. Great job. You cost yourself a lot of jobs, a lot of factories closed, but you reduced the carbon footprint by 37%. However, for all of that sacrifice, and much more, it's been totally wiped out, and then some by a global increase of 54%, much of it coming from China and other countries that are thriving around China, which now produces more CO2 than all the other developed nations in the world. So all of these countries are working so hard on the carbon footprint, which is nonsense, by the way. It's nonsense. It's interesting. In the United States, we have still radicalised environmentalists, and they want the factories to stop. Everything should stop. No more cows. We don't want cows anymore. I guess they want to kill all the cows. They want to do things that are just unbelievable, and you have it too. But we have a border, strong, and we have a shape, and that shape doesn't just go straight up. That shape is amorphous when it comes to the atmosphere. And if we had the most clean air, and I think we do, we have very clean air, we have the cleanest air we've had in many, many years. But the problem is that other countries like China, which has air that's a little bit rough, it blows. And no matter what you're doing down here, the air up here tends to get very dirty, because it comes in from other countries where their air isn't so clean, and the environmentalists refuse to acknowledge that. Same thing with garbage. In Asia, they dump much of their garbage right into the ocean. And over about a 1 week and 2 week journey, it flows right past Los Angeles. You've seen it. Massive amounts of garbage. Almost too much to do anything about, flowing past Los Angeles, past San Francisco, and then somebody would get in trouble because he dropped a cigarette on the beach. The whole thing is crazy. The primary effect of these brutal green energy policies has not been to help the environment, but to redistribute manufacturing and industrial activity from developed countries that follow the insane rules that are put down, to polluting countries that break the rules and are making a fortune. They're making a fortune. European electricity bills are now 4 to 5 times more expensive than those in China, and 2 to 3 times higher than the United States, and our bills are coming way down. You probably see that. Our gasoline prices are way down. They're making a fortune. European electricity bills are now 4 to 5 times more expensive than those in China, and 2 to 3 times higher than the United States. And our bills are coming way down. You probably see that our gasoline prices are way down. You know, we have an expression, drill baby drill, and that's what we're doing. We're going to be much lower in a year from now, but they've come way down over the last year. As a result, every air conditioner is like very uncommon to see one in some of these countries because the electric cost is so high. So while the US has approximately 1,300 heat-related deaths annually, it's a lot. Europe loses more than 175,000 people to heat deaths each year because the costs are so expensive, you can't turn on an air conditioner. What is that all about? That's not Europe. That's not the Europe that I love and know. All in the name of pretending to stop the global warming hoax. The entire globalist concept of asking successful industrialized nations to inflict pain on themselves and radically disrupt their entire societies must be rejected completely and totally, and it must be immediate. That's why in America I withdrew from the fake Paris Climate Accord, where, by the way, America was paying so much more than every country. Others weren't paying. China didn't have to pay until 2030. Russia was given an old standard that was easy to meet, 1990 standard. But for the United States, we're supposed to pay like $1 trillion. And, I said, this is another scam. The fact is, United States has been taken advantage of by the world for many, many years, but not any longer, as you probably noticed. I unleash massive energy production and signed historic executive orders to hunt for oil. But we don't have to do much hunting because we have the most oil of any nation anywhere, oil and gas in the world, and if you add coal, we have the most of any nation in the world. Clean. I call it clean, beautiful coal. You can do things today with coal that you couldn't have done 10 years ago, 15 years. So I have a little standing order in the White House. Never use the word coal, only use the words clean, beautiful coal. Sounds much better, doesn't it? But we stand ready to provide any country with abundant, affordable energy supplies if you need them, when most of you do. We're proudly exporting energy all over the world. We're now the largest exporter in the United States. We want trade and robust commerce with all nations. Everybody. We want to help nations. We're going to help nations, but it must also be fair and reciprocal. The challenge with trade is much the same with climate. The countries that followed the rules, all their factories have been plundered. It's really sad to watch. They've been broken. They've been broken by countries that broke the rules. That's why the United States is now applying tariffs to other countries. And much as these tariffs were for many years applied to us, uncontrollably applied to us, we've used tariffs as a defence mechanism under the Trump administration, including my first term, where hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs were taken in. And by the way, we had the lowest inflation, and now we have very low inflation. The only thing different is that we have hundreds of billions of dollars flowing into our country. But this is how we will ensure that the system works for everyone and is sustainable into the future.